In 2019, we began to build our dream.
But the journey started long before you were invited to watch.
We walked a path that spanned nearly 2 decades.
There were times of joy, pain, and everything in between.
Our lives have completely changed, and we're ready to tell you how it happened.
We're not holding back.
Our mistakes, regrets,
What we wish we could change, our best decisions.
and if we do it again, you'll hear it all.
Come back in time with us behind the camera and answer the question,
Is self-building worth it?
All right, welcome back to Is Self-Building Worth It? The way I feel today, even though we're not self-building anymore, I say no. But today we're going to start framing. So that was super exciting time. But before we get started, let's talk about our design services.
Back40buildings.com. If you're looking for a Barndominium design, we've got something for you. We can go the custom design route. We have a lot of different stock plan options, and we're able to do plans that are various types of construction. So stick frame, steel frame, and post frame. Got a lot of great resources that come along with, especially our post frame plans, because
yes, and we are going to be adding a lot of post frame stock plans. So that will help over the next few months. We're going to be adding those in. We also have a Patreon group. That's for all of you who want to self-build, self-GC, or maybe you want to start building these as a business. It's a great community of other like people. You get to share your builds on there. You get to ask me questions. We do lives. We bring special guests. It's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. But let's go ahead and get into today's video.
All right.
Is there any questions that we want to answer?
Yeah, let's take a look at the comments from, this was published August 19th, 2019. We've got,
looks like Kyle and Greg over on our buildings, except my pants aren't nearly as tight.
Oh, you're literally okay?
No.
no, what it really says is great work, love the videos after the bit about Greg and Kyle, so.
Ooh, our first comment from Bill Scott.
No, he commented on the last video. Yeah, we talked about laser levels. Great job, I'm going to follow your videos. I wonder if this guy, if he continued to watch. Oh yeah, for years this has been a really popular question. Can you share more details about your backhoe bucket lifting jig? And man, we've got to look for that footage because you never posted a video about it, but this was DIY at its finest.
Yeah, it was. I felt like it was pretty safe though, but we should do a video on it. I used a 6-inch I-beam that was laying down at my dad's farm in Missouri. I found it in the weeds and I'm like, ooh. And I fabricated it so I could either fit it in the backhoe bucket or the skid steer bucket, and then I bolted it in. But I probably could do a video on that. And the only problem with that is it's not really, I guess, I mean, who am I kidding? I don't care that it's not OSHA approved. You just have to be smart when you're building stuff like that and think about, a little bit of safety. I mean, that was really solid.
Yeah, I mean, you have to know you always tell people you have to know your limitations.
Yeah.
And you've got to be smart about it, and you can't just make assumptions that you're doing it exactly like you're seeing it done somewhere else. Yeah, so this is where the walls start going up, so.
Yeah, I can remember being excited getting to this point because, I had all the rock down on the building pad, kind of had it leveled off, and to actually start putting up walls was pretty fun. I do remember the first wall I stood up. They don't look that big on the ground, but when you stand them up, they're huge. All right, it's August 15th, and the last couple days have been pretty busy around here. We'll just talk about the material package we got. We did, our package came from Menards, which I still buy, most of the time I still buy my 2x6s, my 2x4s, 2x12 headers, grade board, all that stuff. I still buy that from Menards most of the time. My steel, I do not. And I think we've talked about this a couple times. The problem with their steel is it comes from a manufacturer. You order it, it takes a couple, 2-3 weeks. It gets shipped to your local Menards. They unload it off the truck, load it onto some kind of rack, storage rack. Then you either have it delivered or you come in and they take it off that, put it on your trailer or the truck. And it just gets handled way too much, and a lot of times it comes damaged. Another thing I don't like is I feel like you end up getting, I've used Menards for packages twice. And I feel like I always would end up with a whole bunch of extra trim that I didn't use, nails that I didn't use, all the trim crates you had to pay extra for, and then all they were was 2x6 boxes. And then if you didn't take them back, you didn't get the money back, but it's kind of a pain to take them back. So we now use a smaller steel company for that, and it's just much more efficient. It's actually cheaper. We get a better price. Even if we weren't a contractor, we'd get a better price. And you order, and a couple days later, you have all of your steel for your structure.
Yeah.
And if you have a damaged piece, you can go down, you can literally get it in a day or two. But overall, I wouldn't say I was disappointed. The thing you have to know about Menards, if you get your steel from them and your trims, and this really won't make much sense to some of you who've never done this, but like they have 1/4-inch hems versus 1/2-inch hems, and when that comes to locking your trims together and just cutting them, it's a lot more difficult to make things look well with a 1/4-inch hem.
Will Menard just give me if I give them my plan, will they give you a list of material and you can take it somewhere else? Or what would you recommend somebody do material wood-wise, and then would you do something separate metal-wise?
So yes, you could take your house plan. So you could take our plans that, if you say you buy plans from us or anybody else, you can take those into Menards, and they will create a material list for you for the lumber. They can easily do that with the lumber. It's going to be really difficult for them to get you your steel links off your plans. So the best thing to do, if you want to use Menards for the lumber, take your plans in there. They'll populate a list of materials for you. You can buy them from them, frame up your structure, and then take measurements for your steel. And you can take those to whatever steel company you want to use. And I really need to do a video on how to do that, because we still do that. When we build something, we frame it all up and then we pull measurements, because if you're not exactly on. Now, this was built out of kit and all the links were fine. But if you mess up on, a 1/4 inch or whatever, your side steel might not fit or whatever. So that's kind of my recommendation, is just to frame up your building. You're going to have the roof framed. You can pull lengths for your roof steel, get that ordered with all your other trims, and then while you're putting that up, you can order your side steel.
Yeah, and you order things, and so, you're ordering things separately, whereas sometimes people will order the whole metal package together, and in order to save on delivery, but we're talking $150.
Yeah, and I mean, that's going to depend on where you're at a little bit, but one thing I've learned just with my house and all of the, the houses we built from since then, is if you order all your metal at once, all of the long pieces are going to get rolled out, and they're just going to be stacked from longest to shortest. And the pieces you need first are the longest. So then you have to unstack all of that. And that can be quite a job. You have to have place to set it. You have to make sure you don't scratch it. You have to secure it so if it doesn't get windy. And it just becomes a tedious, time-consuming process. So what I have started to do in the last 1.5 years or so is we frame up our building. It's pretty easy. I mean, you can get your measurements for your trusses just off your truss, and I'll order all of my roof steel and all of the trims for the building in one order. That way, when all my roof steel comes, it's just in one pile. Like there's not a bunch of different lengths. And then all my trims, I can just easily move those to the side. And then I get my roof steel on and I take measurements for all the side steel, get that ordered. And then I trim out windows, doors, garage doors, and all that while I'm waiting for my side steel. And that's going to kind of depend. I mean, if you're ordering from Menards, it could be a few weeks before you're going to be able to get your steel. If it's from a place like what we use, it's usually only a few days, max a week turnaround for these steel manufacturers to get you your steel. And it saves a lot of time in moving stuff around because your side steel, depending on if you have porches and windows, you might have a lot of different lengths of steel that you have to work through. So it just kind of, it's worth the extra $150 delivery charge to have 2 deliveries to not have to, because you're going to spend a ton of time moving steel around. Sorry, I got distracted. There's a bunch of deer walking in the yard. So if you think about stick framing, everybody builds their stick frame walls on the ground and then stands them up 99.9% of the time. And so, you know, you obviously can do that the same thing with post frame. Your walls are a lot bigger. And the way you do that is by using standard girts and breaking your walls down into smaller sections. However, if you want to use bookshelf girts, that's going to be problematic because there's no way you're going to be able to hold that wall together and stand it up. So I personally think a standard girt on the interior and exterior is going to be the most efficient wall because you don't have all of these points of where you have thermal transfer points of, you know, like on a stick wall, every 16 inches you have a 2x6 transferring heat and cold in. If you use bookshelf girts, you're going to have all of those points that touch the outside and the inside, and you're still going to have an efficient house, but I'm just maximizing. If you're one of those people that wants to maximize your efficiency, the standard girts is not only going to help you efficient when building, but it's also going to help your efficiency in heating and cooling too, because then you're going to have this 8.5-inch wall cavity. If you choose to use spray foam, you're going to have an amazing airtight, vapor tight structure that also, you know, has plenty of room for all your wiring and plumbing inside that. So it makes it just real easy during the build process.
Yeah. Helps bug proof it.
Yeah.
Close cell spray foam, you're not going to have things able to dig through it.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll go into the insulation
When we come
conversation when we get to that, because obviously
it's a hot topic.
It's a hot topic, and there is lots to consider. And I think, you know, I think the thing that people get caught up on is the cost. But there's a lot of other things to consider when you get into that. So we'll cover that when we get to that point. But you can see here, this is a good view where you can see how high my piers are out of the ground. So even after I built this, I had to bring a lot more gravel in. And that's what we were talking about earlier, is where I underestimated the amount of gravel that we would use. I mean, that's a foot, but that's a lot of gravel over, you know.
Yeah, 104 feet.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing wasn't like that. The end of the garage was high, and then the end where the house was low.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But this is, I don't know, building like this is really efficient, and it's much easier nailing everything together on the ground than it is, especially if you're doing it by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously the conversation would be different if you had a large crew that was coming in and everybody had a specific job and everybody did one thing, and, you know, like this is not like talking about every scenario.
Here's a look at my boom that I made. I mean, I was pretty proud of that thing.
Yeah. Do you still have it?
Yeah, it's sitting right out there. Sitting down there in the weeds.
Should hang it up in our office someday.
Were you hand nailing at this point? Or?
Oh, yeah, I drove every single nail on this by hand with that hammer that I found on the road when I was 19. Last week, 28 ounce, man. Like, that's probably why I can't do push-ups, is my shoulder, you know, swinging that thing. But yeah, I drove every single one, 30D, 4.5-inch ring shank nails. And I would say nailing on the ground was not a problem. But when I nailed the trusses in, boy, that was hard because I could never get my arm fully extended. And so like I was,
You were like T-Rex in
I
it.
was T-Rexing it. You know what I mean? Little short swings, these little bitty arms.
Yeah. So if you could go back to that point, would you have gone ahead and not cheaped out and bought the nailer? Or do you think that if you're just doing one build that you just suck it up and do it?
I mean, I like tools, so I would have bought the Bostitch probably, because it's, it's a $480 gun.
Sure.
And it would definitely been worth it. Mm-hmm. I mean, the speed, it would really speed things up.
Yeah. Looks like your dad came during this point.
Yeah, he was there a decent amount when I was framing. I think in this video, you'll see me standing walls by myself. I had a rope going out each side of the backhoe window so I could steer the wall into place. Because when you got to kind of work them in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I did it. I managed it.
Yeah. You were creative.
But tools, yes. I mean, I don't know. It's hard for me to say because it wasn't necessary.
Right.
I mean, I hand drove every single one. Mm-hmm. But if
you don't, if you're not, like if someone's questioning, yes, you were in very good shape and stuff like that. So if somebody is hesitant because they aren't in, like, you were a college athlete, like you've been in shape your whole life.
Right.
And so if you aren't in that position, or you already have like shoulder problems or something like that, then it's probably worth the money to go ahead and buy the nailer, and then you can just sell it for half price online when you're done.
And then another thing, just going back to tools, is you can see, we've said that a skid steer is an invaluable tool during a process like this. Like if you looked at that, me moving that bunk of 16-foot 2x6s, I mean, I had to move it 200 feet, which saves you a ton of time versus if you had to like manually carry all of that over there, that would get exhausting. Mm-hmm. But I would say I took my time on this, and I mean, like I nailed it, I think, for the most part. Mm-hmm. Literally nailed it.
No pun intended.
But this was the first wall, and I remember me and my dad, I was trying to get my dad to like tell me when I was straight up and down. So it was just kind of being on the same page. Definitely the skid steer with the boom is much easier.
Well, and you could see, like,
I couldn't see because the bucket was in the way, which like that is a huge advantage when you can see what you're doing versus you're relying on somebody else to tell you.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, when you're lifting these walls, you need to get endless loop straps. So it does require that you then have to go up and unhook them, but you can guarantee that the wall isn't going to come unhooked if you're using like truss hooks. And that's why I don't lift trusses with truss hooks anymore. You'll see that I put all my trusses on with truss hooks, and I just don't like it because, especially if you're doing stuff by yourself and your machine settles, because even a brand new machine over time, the hydraulics are going to settle. They slowly creep down. And if those hooks come undone, that could be pretty dangerous. So I use endless loops on my trusses and everything, and then go up and unhook them.
And all of the brackets, they come with pre-drilled holes for the hardware, right?
Yeah, the brackets are all pre-drilled. You do have to drill the holes, obviously, through your columns. Yeah. So you want to drill bit long enough that it'll go all the way through. You can get to the point where you can hit that all the way through without any problems, but we've gotten a couple messages from people, how the heck am I supposed to drill this through? I can't get it. So what you have to do is I line myself up with that column, and I make sure I'm going in at a right angle to the column. And then you also want to be level. And if you can do that, you're going to get close, and then you can come in from the other way and you can finish out the hole.
But really, you're kind of just saying it takes practice.
Yeah, it takes practice. Mm-hmm.
So maybe if you have a scrap piece of, like, if you've cut your columns and you got some scrap boards and stuff, maybe it would be worthwhile to set those up.
I don't know.
And practice a little.
Yeah.
If you're unsure. If
Everybody gets excited and they just want to. I mean, you got to make sure you're, you know,
right, because often you've got a lot of spunk in you at this point of the build.
Yeah.
Because
you're not beat down yet.
Right. That's coming later. You'll lose your will eventually. Yeah. So, yeah, and if you're curious about, like, you want to dive into what this actually looked like a little bit more, always check the description because we linked the original video to it.
Plus, we'll link a really good video on laying out and framing your wall as well.
Yes.
So you can see the original and how I did it in a much slower speed, but you also can see how I've kind of morphed over the years into my process now. Mm-hmm. I was still working half days back then. What was going on?
I know.
Wonder where you were taking me. I should say, I wonder where you were making me go.
I don't know.
Where were you going, Paul? If you're only working half days, where were you going?
I know, because I don't remember you coming back home.
This is, I think, the day that I was standing walls by myself.
Yeah, and then you referenced Travis in this video, that he wanted to come and help, so I think he's going to make an appearance here.
Oh, did he? Yeah. Travis is one of those friends. I met him at my kind of in-between job after I left law enforcement and I came out here. I worked somewhere for a year, and Travis, oh man, there's a big turkey now. Gosh, all this wildlife just out here trying to lift my spirits. I'm gonna be eating him this spring. But Travis is a really, really good guy. He came out and helped me a couple days, and I definitely needed the help. It was one of those points where I'm like, man, I just kind of needed a little extra hand.
Well, and the nice part about Travis is that he's a big guy.
Yeah.
So there was so much like that times that Travis and then Eric, our brother-in-law, helped us. I mean, it makes a difference when you have somebody that just has brute strength behind them.
Right.
There's 3 turkeys.
3 big toms.
Because like Eric would manhandle. Oh God, these poor people. Trying to learn more. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to even see at some point. Speaking of people that came, like my dad helped me the most. He would come.
Sure. And I mean, he had the most flexibility. He was retired, so it's
Travis came and helped me a couple days, but they were good. They were days that I really needed help.
And Travis wanted to learn. He went on and built
his own building.
Yeah.
Eric helped me with these big, huge windows, which was awesome.
Because he could make, like, you get somebody who's like 6'5", you know, and just they're just wingspan. He could handle. I mean,
I don't want people to eliminate a friend that if they're only like 5'6" or something.
Right. But it really does help if you have a helpful friend who's just bigger than you are.
Justin actually made an appearance and helped me on this. So there was only 4 people that really helped me.
Yeah, and it wasn't. And
watch you one day.
No,
you brought your father-in-law out one day.
Oh yeah.
And
He came out and watched.
Oh
Yeah.
sure.
We were putting metal up that day.
Oh yeah, I was back here. I remember we were doing this piece right here.
This tough area.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, and boy, our father-in-laws, man, they hit it off. It was we scored Justin some in-law points for years through that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I was looking at photos and stuff of the time frame that you're doing this, and you know, what was I doing? And I mean, we were getting ready to start the new school year at this point because it's late August. I had decided.
This was Hunter's first year in school.
Yes, so I had decided to homeschool her for kindergarten because I knew that we would be moving down to Winterset after that school year, and then Remington, we were like, I don't know what happened. We were out of the district that Hunter had gone to preschool in or something like that, so I decided to do stuff with him. Just a good thing our kids are smart, man, because it was kind of a disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, props to you homeschooler moms out there.
Right. I honestly, like, I'm like, I don't know, because the main issue was that our third, she was active enough. So she was like, she wasn't even quite 2, but she was super mobile and super verbal. And so she wanted to be involved in everything. So it was really tough to like teach anybody because she was wanting to literally climb up on the table and like dig through all of the stuff that I was trying to like work with Remington and Hunter on. And because she just wanted to learn too, which, you know, I guess it's fine. I just don't know how people do it when you have non-school age kids, how you manage.
Yeah. Do we want to continue into the second
Yeah,
framing?
let's do it.
To talk about the columns that we use, all of our designs, we recommend you use laminated columns. They're just straighter, they're stronger within a wall system. You're gonna get a lot better quality out of them. They're not gonna warp over time. But, so the rule of thumb that we use is any wall that is 16, and we're talking about sidewall height. So you make this basis off your sidewall height. So any sidewall, which is the walls that carry your trusses, if it's 16 foot or over, we're gonna use a 4-ply 2x6 column. If it is under 16 foot, we use a 3-ply column. So like on my house, I use 4-ply columns because my sidewall height was 18. And then in the garage, we used 3-ply because it was a 10-foot sidewall. For those of you who want to use 6x6 posts, that's fine. It's just gonna be a little bit more difficult finding really straight. If it's a shorter building, it's not that big of a deal, but when you get into like an 18-foot sidewall, and then you know your end wall columns are gonna be even longer. You could have, like I think my end wall columns, the middle one was like 32 feet. So that's long, that is a long 6x6 to get straight, you know what I mean? And then they kind of warp. The reason a laminated column works so well is because you have 3 2x6s, and all of those grains are opposing each other. So if this 2x6 is trying to twist this way, it's got the resistance of the other two, so they stay straight. Whereas a 6x6, there is no opposing force there, so it just lets it warp.
Yeah. One of the comments from this original video was remarking on, they're claiming that we're the first people on YouTube to have roof trusses built correctly and properly from an engineering point of view. And I think you have not been opposed to the idea of building your own trusses and columns and things like that, but for residential, you probably...
Well, I mean, it comes down to how big they are.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I built a couple for this 24-foot wide building. That's not a big deal. The advantage of having your trusses built is they're really not that expensive. I mean, a 48-foot wide truss, like these trusses would probably be somewhere between $600-700 a piece, probably with a 24-inch heel. But they have the gang nails. The gang nails are the big metal plates, and they're installed by a machine. And so they're well built, and you know they're going to last. You definitely could do them yourself, but I'm not sure how worth it would be on a building of this size.
Right. Yeah, the time, the ensuring that you've accounted for your own snow loads, wind loads, you know, all that. That's all done by the truss manufacturer. They engineer the trusses, so.
Yeah, and you're required to have, in most places, you're going to be required to have engineered trusses, so it's going to be kind of a moot point if it's a residence. I guess, looks like Travis is here to help me this day. I remember when we put the first truss up, how wobbly it felt. And I think Travis is 6'5". He probably weighs about 270 pounds, and he was shimmying up the outside truss. I let him pick which one he wanted to go up, and he picked the one with the columns on it, which was probably a good idea. But I can tell you, this is an example of literally the next day I rented a lift.
Yes, and we had that lift for at least a month.
Like a month and a half. I rented it for a month and a half. I think it was like $3,000 a month. So we spent, you know, probably $5,000 on rental, and you know, it was worth it. We still saved thousands of dollars on this, but we had a couple people say, hey, you should have just bought one. And I think if I would have been able to build a shop first where I could have a place where I could maybe work on something, I could have bought a used machine, but the thing when you buy a used machine is typically you're going to have to do a little work on it here and there. And I did not have anywhere to work.
I know you didn't have anywhere to like have
Yeah.
shade from 90-degree heat, let alone actually do any
I mean,
maintenance.
that is one thing that I would recommend. If there's any way that you could build even like a 24 by 24 building, maybe you think you're going to have animals on your farm, your property. If you had that building just to have a place to keep all of your screws and nails and tools and all that, it would be much more efficient. Because that was a huge challenge being out here. Because if it like there was just nowhere to
Nowhere to go.
with anything.
Yeah. Yeah. If you had that, and I guess, you know, if you have enough extra money that you think you can make that work budget wise, then it's also a trial run. So
Yeah, you can build a small building and get all your
kind of work out the kinks of how you want to do it, or like what you felt like was challenging you the most being a DIYer.
If you had to choose a lift, scissor or articulated?
So there's two types of lifts. You have your scissor lift, which is only going to work if you have a flat area, because they will not allow you to go up if I forget what grade it is. And then there's the articulating lift, which is going to have a much smaller basket, but it can be on the side of a hill and you can still go up. And that's what I rented. You'll see here in the next videos. Our property's just really hilly, and there's no way that a scissor lift would have worked on the inside, but it wouldn't have worked on the outside.
Right.
You know, it's one of those things where if you could just have one machine that did everything, but it's just doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why just building in some room for renting things is a wise idea for your build, because it's not going to be necessary to buy every single piece of equipment that you might need depending on your situation.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go out and buy a $30,000 used scissor lift and a $30,000 used articulating lift, and
Yeah. I mean, if you're DIYing your build just because you think it sounds fun and really there's
money isn't in it.
Right, money isn't the top priority, then yeah, I guess you could buy a couple $100,000 worth of equipment and tools and set yourself up. But that's one of the conversations that we've had a few times about people. You want to move out onto a piece of property and you forget, or you don't know, or you forget how much money it will take just to maintain your property alone.
Well, also time.
And time, yeah. Yeah, that this isn't as simple as like, we're just gonna come out here and we're just gonna be able to do nothing and everything's gonna work out.
A couple of things that some of our patrons have done is they've gotten ambitious and they've rented a lift or a piece of equipment for like a month and a half. And the problem with that is if you have a job and then you get bad weather, that's kind of sitting there. So what I like to do is I try to figure out like a week maybe that you can take off of work and try to get, you know, all your trusses up during that week where, you know, you're not taking the chance that, you know, that machine's going to sit there for 3 of the 4 weeks and you not be able to use it.
Yeah.
And then, like, you know, even now I don't own a telehandler. So if I'm doing roof steel where I need a telehandler, I'll get all ready and then I'll rent that telehandler for a couple days where I can just get it all up there in the 2 days. Mm-hmm. So I'm not renting it for the entire week. Yeah, here's where I'm nailing all the trusses in, and that was hard. My arm was like on fire. You can see the extension I put on my boom, my 2x6 laminated extension. This is the articulating lift right here. This is a really versatile lift because if you're really hilly, this will still work. And it is way more comfortable putting everything up like this than it is climbing around. And just the vast majority of people aren't going to be able to climb around. You're going to get tired and you're going to make a mistake and you're going to fall and then it's going to...
Yeah. Yeah, this is another case where your extreme athleticism
Yeah.
is, people can't forget that part.
And here's another thing. It's going to completely steal the joy or fun out of this if you're trying to climb up there and you're not comfortable. And it's really going to steal the joy out of it if you fall and get hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you see right there, back when I made this video, I said the $3,000 rental was worth the peace of mind and safety. You know, and my dad, I think my dad, was 67 at that time, 68. So like I can't have him crawling up around on the roof. And most likely the people that are going to come help you are going to be like a dad or a uncle or, you know what I mean? So you don't really, you want to make sure they're safe because there is a lot of liability there you got to think about.
Yes. Yeah, just because it's something that people have done for decades doesn't mean that there isn't risk associated with it. Like when you're going into, people will make remarks about OSHA and different things like that, and like you want to focus on safety, but like you have to know that this type of work you have an assumed risk. Same thing when you're in law enforcement. There's an assumed risk with what you've decided to do. So just because you do things as safety precautions doesn't mean that you've eliminated all the risk for your project.
Right. I felt pretty good here when I was getting the 4 walls of the house up. I put the last truss up by myself, I think. Or no, my dad was there for that. That was the garage I did a lot by myself.
Well, and they were all the way down at the end of the road.
Well, that's another thing that you have to consider is our driveway. The truck that delivered our trusses could not get in the driveway, so I had to have him lay all of the trusses in the road. So I unloaded the smaller garage trusses off of the semi, and then he dropped all of the house trusses in the road, and then I drug them up one by one onto the property. Which it's what, 5 years later, and I'm still talking about making the driveway entrance a little easier to get in and out of.
Yeah. I feel like I remember when I asked about why our driveway was so steep, you made the comment that you didn't want people to be able to see in and see the deer. But
I mean, that was probably true.
Yeah, that was the literal quote.
Hey man, you got a new vehicle out of the deal because the minivan couldn't make it in.
There is that.
If we'd had a normal driveway, you'd still be driving the minivan.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Paul, for having that steep driveway.
Yeah, thank you, Paul.
Oh man, that was a good feeling. Every time I watch this, I'm like, I want to do this again, but then I go back and see how many videos there are, and like, this part goes relatively quick, but it's all the, like, the electrical, the plumbing. The plumbing's pretty fast, but electrical, HVAC, all the finishing work is very tedious.
Well, and at that point, you've lost interest in a lot of those things because that's not what gets you fired up. And so I think you probably go even slower then because you're not passionate about running 5 miles of wire.
Yeah, I would say one of the hardest things about self-building, and 99% of you are going to be just like us, is you're self-building this on a budget that you've probably stretched, and you really don't have a place to like paint trim, paint doors, which just adds to the difficulty. You know what I mean? You're living in a camper. I don't know how people do that, but like you're living in the camper, all that kind of stuff. I definitely have a very good understanding of how I would do it again if we ever did this. Like the garage would get finished and that thing would be set up like for a living where we could just be comfortable. Oh, I did do this truss by myself. And this was before I used chains, so I had this thing all strapped down, and then you can see all the 2x4 bracing that I had. And it went through some storms. I can remember getting up like at 5 o'clock in the morning and driving out because I was like all night I was stressed out because it was like thundering and lightning, and we had like 8 inches of rain over the course of a couple days. All right, guys, so in closing, make sure you check the description. You can find the link to the original video.
Yep.
To watch that long form. Also, we'll leave a link to a good video on laying out and building your wall. But other than that, this is a pretty exciting phase, getting the house structure built and trusses on. So that being said, we appreciate you guys watching. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, share with your friends, and we'll catch you on the next video.